Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Christopher Stewart. I'm going to be kind of the administrator of this talk today. So now, I don't want y'all guys freaking out if y'all can't um, see anything because there's nothing to see yet. So don't worry about it. As soon as there's something to see, uh, you'll be able to see on your screen. But so tonight, what we're going to discuss is we're going to talk a little bit about some changes that have been occurring in the industry recently and how those actually affect us as storytellers and what it means for us. But before we get started, real quick, I'm going to give a little bit of introduction as to who I am, what I do, and then we'll kind of jump right into this conversation and get some things rolling. Okay. So first off, I am a transmedia producer, which is a really interesting sort of title. So what I do is I work in producing stories across multiple mediums. So I produce stories that transcend a single medium. So I work in film and television, book publishing, um, artwork, comics, radio dramas, all that kind of stuff. And what I deal with is making sure that the story that crosses over those different mediums actually stays coherent and focused and all kind of centered around what it's supposed to. So if just to kind of explain what my job is a little bit more to you guys, um, if you were to have a movie and as part of the film, you wanted to create, say, Facebook profiles for the characters in it and have those characters interact with your actual audience. As a transmedia producer, what I would do is oversee and make sure that the social media department wasn't rewriting parts of the story that the movie had told, and that the movie wasn't messing up things that the social media department was doing and all that kind of stuff. So my job as a transmedia producer is just to really focus on the story and make sure that it stays consistent across any medium it happens to go into. So yeah, so that's what I do. I've been a transmedia producer in the industry for the last 7 years. And I've been working in the film industry for the last 9. So that's what I do. I work mainly with independent projects. And yeah, so anyway, so there's a little bit of background. I do want to make note that we've got Heidi Olson with us again this time. She will be trying to make sure that all your questions are seen and get answered. So if any of you have any questions or whatever, just leave them in the little comment section there, and Heidi will make sure that I pay attention to them. So, all right, let's get on to this and start talking about some of the things that have recently been kind of changing in the entertainment industry. So, most importantly, kind of what dictates the entertainment industry is the fact that us as entertainers are entertaining an audience. So, the number one thing is to understand the audience and what the audience is interested in, how they engage with stories, and so on and so forth. So, first thing that we're going to discuss here is where the audience has changed over the past several years and where it kind of looks like they're going in the near future. So, just a quick sort of, I guess, I don't know, warning. I love over analyzing things. So most of this here is just going to be me over analyzing a lot of facts. So if it gets too much or you don't understand what's going on, please just leave a question and I will try to explain it better. So right here, what we're looking at is we're looking at Google Trends. If you have never played with Google Trends before, you're missing out on life. Basically, what this is Google showing you the top charts for search results for different categories. So you can look at the top charts for all search results for every topic, or you can sort them by topic. So right now we're actually sorting the top search results for the entertainment industry. So this is what people right now, audiences, potential audiences, are actually searching for, and what they're finding. So we've broken this down to a couple of categories. We have actors, kids, TV, movies. We have music artists, people, reality shows, songs, teen pop artists, and TV shows. So if you'll notice, there are very specific things that people are looking for, and they kind of all correlate with each other. So if you'll notice, under reality TV shows, one of the number one things that people are looking at is American Idol. So if anybody's familiar with this new season of American Idol, you'll actually notice that one of the top search results on the teen pop artist is one of the judges this year. So, and there's several other things that connect together as well. So what ends up happening with this, especially in the entertainment industry, is one thing will actually take off and become popular for a time, and it creates this ripple effect as to other things that are popular. So right now, what ended up happening was American Idol became popular. So we're seeing people also trending those people who are judging it. And the same thing with the top movies. You see many of those people appearing in the trending of actors that are being looked up. So it's really kind of a interesting predicament that you find yourself in, where you become more popular and more seen the more times people see you. So audiences are very very recent as far as what they tend to gravitate to, and this is called the recency effect. And this kind of gets into a little bit of the psychological behavior of humans, and I won't get too far into that, but the recency effect basically states that as humans, we are interested in and gravitate towards the things that we have experienced most recently. So an example of this would be if you had seen a commercial for an iPhone, and then you went to the store to purchase a phone, the likelihood of you buying an iPhone is higher than any other phone, because you most recently saw that product as a solution to the problem you've had. So this happens all the time in the entertainment industry, where you'll see one actor or actress whose career will just skyrocket for a period of time because the audience has seen her in something or seen him in something recently. And now the way that you can sell a film, almost guaranteed sell it, is by the recency effect of people knowing that, oh, last time I saw a good movie, that person was in it. So they think, well, I want to see another good movie. So they see that person, and the recency effect kicks in and they go for it. And we see this in these trends here. And I'm not going to go too far into them because I don't want to go over people's heads. But so the recency effect is a big thing that's been playing into the industry for years. And for the most part, nothing ever really changes about the recency effect. It just is kind of a law of nature. But the way in which people have been using the recency effect has recently, has recently changed. So before, the recency effect worked in the favor of a studio. So back in the golden age of Hollywood, what you would have is you would have a studio that produced a particular film or whatnot, And the recency effect would apply to the studio. So an audience saw a film from, say, Warner Brothers that they really enjoyed. The recency effect dictated that next time they went to watch a movie, they would want to see something from Warner Brothers, or they would more naturally gravitate to something from Warner Brothers because that is what they had most recently seen. So what we wind up with now in modern times that has shifted is that we now see a shift in which it's not the studios that the recency effect applies to, but it's the actual story itself. So before, a studio could tell whatever story they wanted as long as they were the studio, and the recency effect would apply to them. Now that's no longer the case because the audience has been removed from the studios. Actually, there has been a study that's been done, which I won't get too far into, but there's been a study that was done that proved that more than 70% of people don't know what studio is behind their favorite films of the year. So it's been in the last several years that we have shifted where audiences no longer care what studio is making the film. They care more about the story of the film. So the recency effect now applies to the story, where if they've seen a story with particular elements in it or a particular plot points that they enjoyed, the recency effect dictates that next time they see something that looks familiar to that, they're going to gravitate towards it. And I'm sure everybody can see how this has affected the entertainment industry, in particular, the trends that we see with what we call superhero movies. So in the last 10 years, well, we'll say the last 9 years. In the last 9 years since, well, it's really 10 years because the original Iron Man was 2008. So in the last 9-10 years since the release of Iron Man in 2008, we have seen the recency effect playing really hard in how audiences go back for this particular genre. They saw a film that they liked in this genre, and then they were encouraged to continue actually watching those kinds of films. So the recency effect dictated that the audience would continue to watch that. So this leads us to kind of the first big shift that has occurred in the industry recently. And that has been a change from the studios who create projects and the publishers who create projects to the actual storyline itself. So we see this actually reflected in the book industry as well. So there is a report that is actually published every year. I love reports, but there's a report that is published every year by the well, it's published by a couple different people, but it's published of the earnings of authors and publishers every year. So I'm switching gears real quick to the publishing industry from the filmmaking industry. And in 2017, the report was published, and it's got some really interesting stuff in it, which I would encourage everyone to read just because I'm a nerd that way and I think it's cool. But if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But so basically, the report in 2017 had some really interesting stuff that plays into the recency effect in the way that people look for books and where they actually purchase their books from. So one of the big things that has been rising in the book industry for years is independent self-published books. So what we're seeing happening is a reader will pick up a self-published book that was recommended by a friend or that they happen to find in a bookstore or whatever, and they read it and they enjoy the storyline because most likely if a self-published book actually makes it to a reader, it has to be of a well enough produced quality to actually be a good book, because it doesn't have the push of a large publishing company behind it to get it going. So if an audience does find a self-published book, they're normally really good. And we see that recency effect playing into kind of what we have right here in this chart. If you'll look, the self-publishing industry actually owns the largest independent percentage of total ebooks sold in the last year. So 34% of all of the ebooks that were sold were actually, well, in the US, were actually independent self-published books. And we also see that as well when we get into the published books as well that were not ebooks. We see the same thing reflect. So this actually gives rise to something really interesting within the publishing industry that has changed dramatically in the last year. And that has been basically the fact that Amazon almost entirely owns a monopoly on the self-publishing industry. So if you'll look here, Amazon literally has 91% of all the indie self-publishing. Apple holds the closest with only 6%, and poor Nook only has 2%. So what has happened, and what we kind of see with this, is we see that audiences do not care who their books come from. They care about the content of the book in general. And the recency effect is playing into the fact that they've discovered that the independent style books that are published independently are the ones that tend to have the higher quality story that they enjoy more. So they come back for those. So that has been a big shift in the publishing business as well as the film industry. And we are seeing actually the same thing ripple across into the music industry as well, with the rise of indie artists in the past several years. So this actually gives way to a new kind of psychological phenomenon, which is where audiences will move a particular understanding that they have of a particular industry into other industries that it may not apply to. So we have the music industry and we have the film industry, which are both part of the larger entertainment industry, obviously, but do not operate the exact same way. You do not buy CDs the way that you buy tickets for movies and so on and so forth. You don't produce them the same way. They are different. But there's this interesting psychological phenomenon where when an audience member does not understand what goes behind the producing of a particular product, so they don't know what actually goes into creating it, they assume that the limited understanding they have of another industry applies to it. So this has come into interesting play with the fact that a lot recently there has been a kind of uprising of people creating sort of behind the scene analytical sort of looks as to how the film industry operates and functions. We are seeing a lot more people break down, you know, who's got what contract and what deal with what studio and all that kind of stuff. That has risen a lot out of what has been called the shared universe, which is the concept of having movies that share a single universe. So we've seen where in the past 10 years, audiences have grown to care way more about the actual business workings of the film industry than they ever have before, because they're trying to figure out what's going to be the next movie or the next installment of these shared universes. So they're wanting to get into the political politics of how the business side of the industry works. And because the same audience who watches movies are the ones who read books and who listen to music, they're carrying over their understanding as to how the industry works, as far as the business goes, from the film industry into all the other industries. So it actually has created a really interesting sort of paradox where uh, people actually are assuming that other industries are operating the same way as the film industry is, even when they don't, which is pretty strange because in doing so, what they've done is they've basically created a um, like a information vacuum where what it is the audience wants um, everything to function the way that the film industry does, even if it doesn't. And they applied that to their understanding of what is a good book or what is a good piece of music as to how much film value it has. So we see this in the adaptation of books and the use of music in films. If someone reads a book and can't see it being a good movie, they think it's a bad book. And if someone listens to a song and it doesn't mirror the kind of sounds that they hear in movies, or it doesn't have a cinema quality sound to it in its particular performance with the bass notes and so on and so forth, they think that it's bad music. So, because of this weird fascination that the audience in general has with the functioning of the film industry, it has rippled into the other forms of storytelling as well, to where now there's this weird effect that has happened in recent years where all forms of storytelling are being judged off the merits of films and not off the merits of their actual industry, which is not a good thing for us as storytellers because it causes us to have to actually compete with each other in the sense that we're all trying to make movies, basically, even if we're writing a book, which doesn't really work because a book and a movie aren't the same thing and they're not told the same way. And what has been really interesting, which is kind of where I'm getting to here, is that in like the past 5 years, there has been this trend where people have started to pick up on. Now, granted, this did start back in the early 2000s as well, but it fizzled out. But it has been coming back where people have picked up on this fact that everything is being kind of judged by the audiences on the merits of film. And it has now given rise to something that's called transmedia, which is, as I explained in the beginning, the idea of taking one story and bridging it from medium to medium. So this has been kind of an interesting way that is pleasing the audience because they're able to judge these mediums off of the merit of a film without actually having to tell the same story twice. So we've seen this a lot with the rise of superhero films, um, where the films will come out and then the comic book industry will create a like what happened before the movie sort of comic book series, or a comic book series that takes place after the movie that carries on the storyline from the film but doesn't redo it, so that the audience can do what they want to do and judge the comic book off the merit of the film without actually hurting the particular art itself, because they are actually judging it correctly instead of incorrectly. So, an example of how this wouldn't work is if someone was to go watch a superhero movie and then read a book about superheroes that was completely different, because
Okay.
the way that this actually works
Okay.
is that the book itself isn't
Hi,
actually
Thanks.
the book itself isn't actually told in a the same style as a movie. So what we end up seeing is we end up seeing that the viewer actually is judging this book based off of a movie that's told in a different style. You don't have the same kind of action sequences in a book, and you don't need them like you do a film to capture the audience. So we're seeing where books are having to become more like films, and audio is as well, just to be able to keep up. So the way that has been emerging to combat this, and the way that has been being proven so far as to be a great way to actually fight back against this sort of genericizing of all entertainment, has been to actually embrace the fact that people want them to be the same and to make them the same. So this has actually created a brand new industry of transmedia storytelling. And basically, this has been one of the biggest shifts in entertainment industry in the past 100 years, is the rise of this idea that now all of our entertainment is intertwined into single sources. And this doesn't just go to the creator, but this goes all the way to the distributor and the audience as well. So what we've seen is we've seen where distributing faculties and companies and distributing platforms have actually shifted, and the ones that have been gaining the most revenue in the past 5 to 10 years have been those who are embracing this. So I'm sure everybody is familiar with the concept of cord cutting, but is a phrase that refers to people getting rid of their cable television to go to subscription services instead, places like Hulu and Netflix and all that kind of stuff. And this is actually happening across the board with entertainment. We're seeing people who are going to things like podcast versus the traditional radio. And the reason this is being done is because audiences now are picky, and they have very, very short attention spans. So what's happening is they're wanting catered to them entertainment that's right there at their fingertips, and exactly what they want every time they want it. So we've seen a big rise in things like Netflix and Hulu and even Amazon, where they support this kind of cross between mediums and cross between different platforms of storytelling. Amazon has recently made one of the most expensive purchases in television history when they bought the rights to be able to make the Lord of the Rings television series. And the reason they purchased this is because the CEO and founder of Amazon wants to create what he calls the everything store. And the concept behind it is that people don't want to have to go to different places to find what they want, because they want to know that where they're at and what they're looking for knows what they want and can show it to them. So this is kind of um, just a fundamental fact of humanity. We love to feel as if people care about us and want to know who we are. So, if you think about the old fashioned kind of idea of a general store where the cashier and manager of it knew your name, knew what the normal stuff was that you would go in there to buy, and knew all the little kids in the town and who liked the taffy and who liked the sun drops and all that kind of stuff. That is basically what audiences are looking for in these platforms that provide entertainment. They're looking for a platform that knows who they are and provides them the entertainment with minimal effort on the audience's part that they actually enjoy. So we've seen rise to all of these kinds of platforms, and we've seen a dramatic cutback in the more traditional platforms where uh, where we actually have less choices and less options. So, like cable television, before you would buy a package and you would have bundled hundreds and hundreds of channels that you didn't want, only to get maybe two channels that you did want. Where now we've seen a rise to these new kinds of platforms that actually allow you to choose to only purchase the subscription to the two channels that you want. So, we see this in the increase of digital ebooks, where people prefer the fact that Amazon and Books a Million's online store and all that has these more intelligent learning algorithms that actually will pay attention to what you've searched before, what books you've purchased before, and suggest to you things that you'll like, where a traditional bookstore won't. Although traditional bookstores will never go out, because as long as somebody has a hard copy version of a book, the general understanding that the hard copy is always better because it smells awesome will just stay around. But we are seeing, and we will continue to see, how people want things to be more convenient, faster for them, and more obvious. So, some of the big changes that we've seen in the industry is this shift to sort of these almost all in one general stores of entertainment, where we can get the entertainment of books, movies, magazines, um, music all in one place, which is why Amazon's profit shares have gone up and up and up and actually haven't had a decrease in the past 10 years, is because that is what they're actually offering the audience. Is they're offering them one place where they can purchase their books, they can watch their movies, they can get their music, and they can even do their grocery shopping too. So, um, we see more and more of these kinds of platforms emerging, and we see the ones that are uh, niche specific actually kind of falling away. So, um, back in early 2010, up until just recently at the end of 2017 and beginning of 2018, YouTube, which is the world's largest video platform for publishing your own content, had been through quite a few lawsuits and had gotten into some trouble with their ad services. And that led to them trying to recreate their algorithm that showed what people wanted. And where this all originated was with a new discovery and understanding that audiences want entertainment, they want advertisement that is actually catered towards them and that appeals to the exact niche that they're in. So, uh, this has kind of created an interesting uh, place where audiences are looking for platforms that can offer them multiple kinds of entertainment in one place, but stays within the niche they enjoy. So we're seeing audiences looking for niches that actually cross over from platform to platform. So we don't see people who are like, oh, well, I enjoy music and, that's my niche is music. I like music. Or we're not seeing these people who's like, well, my niche is books. I just really like books. We're starting to see people who just enjoy being entertained in general and enjoy a specific niche of genre or niche of kind of story that they want from these. And I'm sure if you guys thought about your taste in books and your taste in movies and your taste in music and any other form of entertainment you engage in, you would realize that you actually participate in this as well, whether it be you listen to Christian music and watch Christian movies and read Christian books, or if it's even more specific, where the particular genre of music that you listen to is the same kind of genre of music that is in the films that you watch as well, and the same kind of storylines and plots that are in the movies you watch are also in the books that you enjoy, or even the setting, like a medieval setting or something. So, what we see is we see people who want to engage in multiple different forms of entertainment, but want them to all be in the niche that they enjoy, which has created a really interesting place for us as creators, which is where this is kind of all coming to, where audiences want from us entertainment that's tailored exactly to who they are and what they enjoy, which is pretty terrible for us because as creators, there's more people in the audience than there is us. So we can't create a specific story for each and every one of the people in the audience. So what we're left with is an audience who wants a story tailored to them, and us as creators not being able to tailor that to them. So this actually has created a really interesting predicament for the entire entertainment industry, and some of the leaders in it have been trying to figure it out for years. Particularly, a lot of the big producers in Hollywood have really been trying to figure it out, and that's where we see a lot of these like uh, universe kind of stories that are showing up all the time. Is from this sort of, oh well, we'll try to create these niche stories for the audience, but create a bunch of them so that we can make our money back. So like superheroes became a niche. So we're going to create a bunch of superhero movies because since the audience for it isn't huge, we need a bunch of them to spread out the loss of capital to be able to make our money back. And that's why we rarely see a standalone film or book anymore, is because the rise of series appeals to that. You find a small audience in a niche and you write multiple or you create multiple stories for that particular audience to spread out the blow of financial loss to them. So, those have been some major trends and changes in the industry as of late. So where does that leave us as creators? Um, it's a really, really interesting kind of place. It's left us to where, unfortunately, it's almost impossible now to stand on your own as a creator because unless you're one of these jacks of all trades who can basically do anything and pick up anything and do it well, uh, you're going to need to find other creators to be able to appeal to the audience. Um, People no longer are interested in entertainment that only entertains them in one particular form, but ones in which they can engage in multiple forms. So, as a case study, this particular webinar here is actually engaging you in 3 different forms of entertainment. It is engaging you in a traditional, more like radio style entertainment with just my voice being what you hear. It is engaging you in a text driven conversational style entertainment in the comment section, the live chat. And it is also engaging you in a periodically visual way. And as the audience, you see these all really as one form of entertainment, which is a really interesting place that we've never been in before in the entertainment industry. Before, entertainment stayed separated. A book was a book, and a movie was a movie, and um, conversation was conversation, and music was music. And now we've reached a point to where they all blur. And even as the audience, we don't notice that we're engaging in multiple forms of entertainment all at the same time. And this has happened with the rise of technology and entertainment being at people's fingertips. So if something doesn't engage your senses and keep you focused for a long enough period of time, you just move on to something else because there's plenty of other content out there. If you start watching a video on YouTube and it doesn't really catch your fancy, you'll move on to the next one before finishing it. If you're in a bookstore and you're reading the first chapter of a book and it doesn't really catch your fancy, you'll pick up another one because there are so many options out there. The audience has decided that they're not going to settle for something that isn't exactly what they want because there are so many options out there. They want exactly what they want. So one of the ways around this is to engage multiple senses to keep them entertained, to where when one falls short, the other picks up the ground. Where in this case, our visuals are falling very, very short, and nobody would be sitting here watching this video, but the audio and the chat are picking up the slack to keep you engaged. And hopefully, the topic in general, probably not because it's kind of a boring topic, but um, that's kind of where we found ourselves as creators. We can no longer use one medium to entertain our audience because there's too much competition. And our audience has this smaller attention span to where they can't, well, not to where they can't, but that they demand that the entertainment keeps them entertained, or they'll leave it because they can find something else that entertains them. So it's put us in an interesting place where, as creators, we're being forced to start to think outside of the particular form of entertainment that we are entertaining our audience in, and trying to figure out how we can engage them in more than the one medium that we're working with. We've seen this in the rise of the recent sort of comeback of the musicals, where we have things like Hamilton, the Broadway stage play that took everything by storm back in 2000 and I think 15, possibly, maybe, if I have that right. And then we see it as well with La La Land and The Greatest Showman, which both were nominated for Oscars. We see where the audience has enjoyed being able to watch a film or watch a stage play, but also be able to enjoy the music as well. So we're seeing that audiences are now demanding this kind of multimedia facet of entertainment. They're demanding to be entertained in more than one way at the same time. And we're seeing that particular forms of medium that aren't providing that for audiences are actually dwindling. There has been an increase in Amazon Prime subscribers and people watching shows on Amazon Prime, which I know everybody's thinking, but Amazon Prime shows are terrible. Nevertheless, there's been an increase in people watching things on Amazon Prime versus Netflix for like the first time ever, which is kind of an interesting to think about because Netflix has been a tyrant in the streaming industry since basically they stepped foot into it. Early 2010, I believe, is when they stepped foot into that industry. But now we're seeing that shifting to other platforms that are offering more ways of engaging. So, where Netflix exclusively allows us to engage in TV shows and films, um, we're seeing the audience actually preferring to subscribe to things like YouTube Red or YouTube TV, where they can engage in both narrative, film structured uh, things as well as short YouTube style videos, as well as be able to participate in live television sports. So we see this influx of um, these multifaceted multimedia platforms are the ones getting all the views, which as creators means that we need to start providing these multifaceted multimedia um, projects because the distributing platforms that are the ones that will be around in the future are the ones that are demanding that we have this kind of multi engagement interaction. Um, if you think about a Netflix video or a Netflix movie, you watch the movie, you enjoy the movie, you get done with the movie, you leave the platform. Maybe you watch a second movie or another episode or whatever. One thing though that you really never think about that you can do is comment. You can actually comment on Netflix, leave reviews, leave opinions. But rarely do people ever think about the fact that they can do that. Where places like Facebook or YouTube, that is part of the entertainment, is the comment section. I have observed many people who, when watching a YouTube video, in the middle of the video will scroll down the screen to where they can no longer see the video just to read the comments in the comment section. So, uh, and we see that people will spend more time consistently watching videos on YouTube than they will watching um, films on Netflix. People actually spend more time watching shorter videos on YouTube than they do watching movies or TV shows on places like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or those kinds of things. So we see that these platforms that are allowing audiences to engage in entertainment in multiple ways at the same time are the ones that are kind of rising above the crowd and are becoming the ones that look like they will stick around for the future. Um, for a while, though, people did think that YouTube was going to go away because creators were getting angry at them in the way that they were functioning the site. But at the beginning of 2018, they launched a new program in which they now have several different human aspects to YouTube for their vetting services, where humans actually watch the videos to vet them, as well as they now have open communication channels between some of the top creators on YouTube. So, to help them figure out how to improve the site. So we won't see YouTube going away anytime soon. And based on the data from the way that audiences have been engaging with stories and projects, we won't be seeing these kinds of platforms going away at all. If anything, we'll see them being taken over the um, medium specific platforms that we kind of see exist now. So we're going to start seeing platforms more like Facebook, where if you think about Facebook, what particular um, what particular form of entertainment does Facebook actually participate in? It's really hard to pin it down. They participate in a dialogue form of entertainment with comment sections and written posts. They also participate in almost a live TV style form of entertainment with their live streaming services, as well as also they've introduced YouTube Watch, which I mean, not YouTube Watch, Facebook Watch, which is more of an episodic form of entertainment, as well as they've had videos for several years now. Um, they also participate frequently in music with the way that they allow you to be able to connect through uh, Spotify to be able to actually see what your friends are listening on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. So more and more we're seeing rise to these kind of multifaceted forms of entertainment and these platforms that allow you to engage in entertainment in different ways. So this kind of puts us as creators in this place where we now see that we can no longer be medium specific in what we tell, but we need to be niche specific in how we tell it. So no longer are we just filmmakers, or are we just radio DJs, or are we just, you know, music stars or novelists. If we want to be a true engaging entertainer who and storyteller who's able to stand the test of time that has snuck up upon us here, we have to be able to engage our audience in multiple ways of entertaining them. So, um, that's kind of one side of the coin, is that we are now reaching this point where the audience wants to be engaged in multiple ways at the same time, and kind of the fall of the media specific ways of telling stories and more of the niche specific way stories that we tell. The other side of the coin is the fact that um, for the first time in history, audiences are demanding more uh, creativity from creators than they ever have before, which is something that I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me on, because they'll be like, but stories are getting lazier and lazier and people are accepting them more and more and more. Okay, so let's stop that argument here for just a second. Everybody's saying that films and movies and books and radio and all that stuff is getting lazier and lazier, and that the audience is accepting it. We're all going to agree with that everybody's saying that. Okay, so if everybody's saying that things are getting lazier and they're demanding that they be better, then no one is accepting the lazy entertainment. If you listen to any sort of uh, news buzz about the quality of entertainment, everyone is demanding that it be higher, that we be less lazy with the way we produce it, that we be more intentional in what we produce and how we produce it and why we produce it and all that. We may say, oh, the audience has come to accept the fact that we are lazy as storytellers, and they'll accept just throwing in some explosions in there to keep them entertained. And no, that's not the case. More and more and more, the audience is demanding those explosions to look realer and realer. They may not be demanding that the stories surrounding those explosions make more sense, but they're demanding that we be better at our craft. They're demanding that we push technology farther than it's ever been before, that it feel more real, that it be more real. The uh, introduction to 3D films or 360 films, well, 3D and 360 films, have shown that, where the audience now wants to not be stuck looking at a screen, but to be able to turn around and see what's behind them or look above them, and see the whole world that they've been immersed in. We also see virtual reality becoming a huge facet of storytelling as well. Um, so the audience not only is demanding that they be entertained in multiple ways at the same time, but they're also demanding that we entertain them better and that we entertain them more. So, as creators, that puts us in an interesting place where we have to be diverse in multiple ways, multiple mediums of telling stories, but we also have to be better and better at telling specific stories in specific mediums because the audience is demanding them to be good. Uh, we are not going to end up with better and better CGI explosions in movies if the teams behind those explosions are also trying to figure out how to write novels. But the audience is demanding that those people be good at both the explosions and the novels, or at least they're demanding that the companies be good at both. So we see that audiences want us to be better and to tell better stories and to produce better content, but they also want us to be diverse in what we produce, which sounds like completely impossible. It's like, how are we supposed to, as creators, create content in multiple mediums and be good at all of them? That's like spreading us too thin. So that's kind of the place the entertainment industry has sort of come to. It's changed in such a way that audiences have smaller attention spans. The recency effect is now applying more than ever in the kinds of um, niche sort of stories and genres that they gravitate to, and their demand for the fact that we meet those niche requirements of who they are. And then they've also demanded that we tell more engaging and more interesting stories than ever before. So we've reached this point where the audience is now demanding more from a single creator than a single creator can actually give. Um, and that has really created a place where we as storytellers can no longer work alone. Back even 5 years ago, there was a huge rush of independent this, independent that, where one storyteller, one creator could go out and be a one man band and actually make a decent living and um, be, relatively popular in how and whatever particular medium they told their project in. But that has been quickly fading away, and trends show that it will continue to go this way, where no longer is a creator able to just create in a single medium, but the audience is demanding that they create in all mediums or in multiple mediums. Um, a great case study of this would be cover artists on YouTube, or YouTubers who are now becoming cover artists. Logan Paul is a really great example. He is a comedian, YouTuber who his audience demanded more and more from him, and he now creates original music content as well. Before he was just a comedian, and they demanded more from him, and now they're demanding that he create these music as well. And they demand that he be good at both. He be good at both the videos that he makes and the music that he creates. So this has turned being a creator into more of a team sport than it really has ever been before, with these audiences demanding these kind of multifaceted forms of entertainment, and they're demanding them be better and more engaging and more higher quality, where um, we're kind of seeing uh, the fall of the independent industry. Not in the sense of where the corporations are going to be taking over again, and the corporations will be in charge of what comes out, like we saw in more of the film industry back in the golden age of Hollywood, where you had three or four big producing companies who kind of dictated what got to be out. We're not seeing that, but we've moved past the sort of independent stage of the entertainment industry where uh, the independent creator was able to create in a niche platform, a niche form of media, and the audience be satisfied. We're now seeing where they want to feel special, they want to feel like they're in their own niche, but they want that niche to cross over into every form of entertainment that they enjoy and want to engage in. So we're seeing where the independent individual can no longer be a creator like they used to, even 5 years ago. And we now see where independents have to be more of a team and more of a facet of individuals who can participate in different kinds of mediums. A recent trend in big corporations is to hire social media experts and helping them create their brand image because they know that audiences want to engage with them in these more multimedia, multifaceted platforms. And there was a big influx several years ago of all these corporations wanting these um, social media people to be hired. And now we're seeing that die off, and we're seeing where now they're wanting to hire people who um, now, granted, companies will always want to hire one person to do the job of eight if they can, but that we're now seeing them to where they're hiring people who know how to work Facebook, and then people who know how to work Twitter, and then they're also hiring small professional film crews as well as hiring literary experts to be able to compose like written press releases or blog articles. We're seeing where more and more and more creators are having to pick one particular medium to be extremely good at, but not able to actually make it anywhere on their own without the help of other people within other mediums to be able to create these multifaceted, multi engaging sort of forms of storytelling. Okay, so I've rambled on long enough, and I think it's time for me to catch up on any questions that have been asked because this is supposed to be a general discussion, not just me blurting out facts. So, um, Heidi, have there been any questions I need to address? Okay, yeah, sure. Oh yeah, we'll do a recap. Why not? Let me handle that link first. Yeah. So there we go. Cool. And yeah, I will recap basically all that I went over. So I went over some boring facts and talked about some studies and some psychological behaviors of audiences. But the nutshell gist of everything that I went over is we've seen a shift in the industry of entertainment. So this crosses books and music and film and even social media. We've seen a shift in where audiences are demanding to be engaged in multiple forms of entertainment at the same time, where we have the emergence of platforms like YouTube, where you're allowed to engage in comments and video entertainment at the same time, are places like Facebook, where you're able to skim through quickly and engage with thousands of people at the same time, or even with people wanting to text while watching a film. We're seeing where audiences are demanding a multi-platform, multimedia experience to entertainment. But we're also seeing where they're demanding us as creators to be better and better at the entertainment that we create. So we see where they're wanting our special effects to look better in our movies. They're wanting our novels to have more, more. I want to say sequels, but that doesn't really work. Um, More parts to them. They want them to be continuous in their story. They're looking for more series driven novels. We see music where the audience is wanting it to have bigger and more diverse sound. We're used to a, just acoustic guitar track had the same sort of power as a fully orchestrated song. That's no more. The audience is now demanding us to have bigger and better, and they're demanding it to have a higher quality of story as well. Um, if you pay attention to, now, granted, there are some stuff like Dickens and um, uh, U2 and all that kind of stuff in different mediums and genres where they are still good today. But if you pay attention to the majority of things that were released only, maybe 20 years ago in entertainment, the audience is not letting us get by with the things that they used to let us get by with as creators, even though sometimes we feel like they are because we watch movies and we think, wow, that story was terrible. Or we read a book and we think the grammar in that was awful. What are these fragmented sentences? And yes, that does occur, but the audience always complains about it. The audience isn't letting us just get by with whatever we want. They want us to create good stuff. And they're demanding that we do it. And they're demanding that we do it in this multi platform, multi engaging sort of environment. Uh, One of the things that's really proof of this is 360 films and uh, virtual spaces and all this kind of stuff. So audiences are looking for more wide range of entertainment in the entertainment that they engage with. They want it to be able to not just be one kind of form of entertainment they're engaging with, but multiple ones at the same time. But also, they're wanting them to be niche. They don't want them to span a broad range of genres. They want them to be very precise in a particular genre. And they want them to feel catered and special to them. So, uh, where they're wanting us to expand the mediums that we can entertain in and entertain them in multiple mediums at the exact same time, they're wanting us to confine what we actually use in those mediums to entertain them with. They want that to be laser focused, but then they want the way in which we blast it at them to be from a thousand different angles. So it has created an interesting place for us as storytellers where we are being demanded to be able to tell stories in multiple platforms. And we are also demanded to be able to tell them better in those platforms, which means we need to, as a creator, be able to write really great books, but also be able to make really great movies. Which, for anyone who is a creator, they know that that's really near to impossible. The people who specialize in something are always the ones who are better at it than the jack of all trades. So, I mean, that's why the phrase is jack of all trades, master of none, because that's how it happens. If you try to do multiple things, you'll never be good at any of them. But if you focus on one thing, you'll be great at it. So we've come to the point where the independent artist rise has kind of reached its peak and is now declining, where no longer does the audience look for these niche artists who work in niche platforms and only work in those platforms, but they're now looking for creators who are creating and working in multiple platforms, but they're still demanding the platform medium specific excellence of the independent creator rise. So they're still demanding us to be able to tell just as good of stories and use the mediums and platforms just as well as we could back in the independent artist rise, where we were laser focused on telling the best story we could in a particular medium, but they're wanting us to now tell it in multiple mediums at the same time, but it be just as laser focused and just as great. So we've kind of reached a point where it has become close to impossible for a creator to be a, one man band like we saw emerging during the whole independent sort of rise of creators that gave place with the internet and the 21st century and all that kind of stuff. We now see where uh, the audience still wants what feels like the independent creator, but they want them to be able to have the experience and functionality of an entire team of creators. And um, the trends don't seem to indicate that the audience is going to be demanding anything different anytime soon. That seems to be where they're headed, and they seem to be headed very strong in that direction. So, as creators, we've gotten to the point where the audience no longer wants us to be confined to a single medium in the way that we create, but they want us to be as good as we were when we were confined to a particular medium, which means we now must rely on each other to be able to accomplish this new way of telling stories, because we now have to have someone who's really good at filmmaking and someone who's really good at novel writing just to please one audience, because they want us to be able to do both great. So that's kind of a recap real quick of what we were discussing. Did that get that? Did we have any other questions? I got totally distracted. Oh yeah, that's so weird how people do that. Yeah. So one thing that I did discuss that I'll recap for anyone who didn't get it. Um, so there has become this weird, super weird trend that totally fascinates me. I get fascinated by weird things, but this really weird trend where audiences are now comparing entertainment in general to films, which is really weird. We compare the kind of music that we like to the kind of films that we like, or we compare the kind of books that we like to the kind of movies that we like. Um, that's why books that are adapted into movies do so well, because they are a particular story that can work in these multiple mediums. And for whatever reason, the film industry was able to capitalize on this first and moved in on it first. So now they've kind of become what audiences compare other mediums to. So, um, it's because the entertainment industry was able to kind of capitalize on multiple senses at the same time, visual and audio at the same time. And then they moved into 3D and all that kind of stuff. Since they were engaging multiple senses and multiple forms of entertainment at the same time, now audiences are comparing other forms of entertainment to movies. So you read a book and you get done with the book, and if you don't immediately see how the book could be a great movie, you actually don't like the book, which is really weird. And it's the same way with music as well. So it's become this kind of interesting thing. If you can't listen to music and see a scene playing out when you listen to it, you really don't like the song. which is so weird because it's music. It's not a movie, but it's being compared to movies, and we expect it to have the same quality of that. We expect it to engage us in multiple senses at the same time. So yeah. Anyway, okay, I'm done with that. Was there something else? Uh, I will. Give me just a second and I will pull it up. But yes, I can. Um, oh, cool. Then, well, if that's all we have for now, I'm going to actually switch gears just a little bit and move into talking about some ways some people have been using some of this information in the way that they are creating new forms of entertainment and all that kind of stuff. Um, just so we can kind of get an understanding as to where maybe us as creators are headed in the near future. So let me post this link. And I'm going to real quick touch on what creators is for anyone who doesn't know, since I am posting the link. Misspelled web, an R. But anyway, um, there's supposed to be a B in there somewhere. But anyway, so basically, what creators is actually this actually fits really well with our conversation. So creators is a platform that actually it's a social media platform, but it's bringing together different kinds of creators all into one place. So you've got filmmakers and novelists, dancers, singers, um, graphics artists, all of them on one platform, and they all have their individual groups. So there's for specific groups for radio drama. There's specific groups for filmmaking and book writing and dancing and all that kind of stuff. But it's all within one platform of creators to where it actually kind of uh, helps with the fact that audiences are now demanding us to be able to do multiple different kinds of stories and engage them in multiple ways. Creators actually brings us all together as creators onto one platform to where we can work with each other and help each other out with the particular stories that we're telling to be able to meet this kind of new audience. So that's what Creators is. It is a social media platform. It is also a database that can actually help you keep your credits organized and sorted. It works as a sort of ambassador for you with your credits. It gets them verified and approved so that they're actually seen within the industry as legitimate things that you've done. It will list them on places like IMDb and stuff like that for filmmakers and other places for other different kinds of storytellers. But it gets them listed, all your credits on the appropriate places so that the industry sees them as legit, and it can help you gain a sort of standing in your industry, all by being able to work together and kind of join together and help each other in their weaknesses and play off of other people's strengths. So yeah, that's what creators is. Just wanted to explain that a little bit since I did put that link up there. So, but I have a whole webinar on how to actually use the platform, which if I need to do another one in the future, I'd be more than happy to do it. We're actually in May updating the entire operating system of the platform, so it's going to change. Probably we'll be doing another webinar the day that we change the platform, the look and navigation of it, just to kind of explain to people a little more of how it functions at that point. Um, okay, so um, I'm going to maybe I'm not. Okay. So, hmm. Decisions. I only have 40 minutes. What do I want to do with these last 40 minutes? Okay. So I'm going to do two things real quick with these last 40 minutes. First, I'm going to real quick talk about some ways we see the entertainment industry catering to this new kind of audience and some of the neat stuff that has emerged from it. And then some theoretical ways of being able to capture this new audience that has come in. And then we'll wrap it up at the end with sort of touching base on how to be able to, as creators, move forward and tackle this new kind of industry, ways that we can pray about it and be able to help each other. Because, like I said, more than anything, we're seeing it now become a team sport versus an individual sport. So, here we go. Breakneck speed. All right, I'm ready. Here it is. Okay, so the first thing that we've seen is in the film industry, we've seen where films are now, the story of films are being brought from the film into other mediums. This is kind of a rudimentary way of capturing this audience, and it's really sort of the worst way of doing it because they stay fairly unconnected. Um, Most people don't even know that some of their favorite films have accompanying books or radio dramas or the likes, but most big franchises now do. Um, but most people don't realize it because within the actual mediums themselves, they don't give avenues or windows to the next medium. They stay confined to themselves. So if you're, say uh, say you're a big Harry Potter fan, because everybody knows that Harry Potter has books and movies, or Lord of the Rings. Let's go with Lord of the Rings because I'm going to use that later. But we'll go with Lord of the Rings. So you're a big Lord of the Rings fan. So that means that you've watched the movies and never read the books because the books are extremely long and you couldn't make it through all the words that J.R.R. Tolkien kept writing in there. And then there was the Council of Elrond that was way, way too long. So you just gave up on reading it, but you watched the movies again and you really enjoyed them. But let's take that for instance. Most people are aware that there are books of um, the Lord of the Rings movies, but if you watch the movies don't in any way encourage you or demand that you engage with the books. And the books are the same way. They don't in any way encourage or demand that you engage with the movie. Where these other kinds of platforms like Facebook or YouTube or even what Amazon has been doing with the integration of IMDb into their Amazon Prime Video, where the platform itself is encouraging and in some instances forcing you to engage in multiple forms of entertainment at the same time, where on Facebook you are being forced to engage in comments or in likes. YouTube, you're the same way. You're being forced to engage with these videos and with the comments, and even with like Amazon and their movies. As you watch them, you see facts from IMDb popping up on the side, forcing you to engage in multiple ways. So, the rudimentary way that people are trying to captivate this need for entertainment that entertains us in multiple ways across multiple platforms is just by making book adaptations of movies or movie adaptations of books. And we've been seeing that for years. But that was, to borrow the colloquialism, that was kind of the caveman form of doing it. That was when people first started seeing these trends in the industry. Their initial way of trying to captivate the audience was to do this. And it worked for a time, but now the audience has wised up to it and they're demanding that we do more. So that that kind of is no longer a viable way of being able to captivate this new audience, is to do it this way. They're kind of no longer satisfied with just adapting a book into a movie, or adapting a movie into a book, or adapting a book into a radio drama, or adapting a radio drama into a movie. You know what? I don't think I've ever really seen that. I'm sure somebody's done it, but I don't think I've seen it. But anyway, so now we've been forced to develop new ways of doing this. So some new ways that people are doing this is with VR. So they're forcing people to engage in almost a video game like atmosphere with films, with 360 films and virtual reality films, where they're almost making the audience into a character in which they are engaging in these films in sort of a video game way, where now the audience is being forced to engage in both a video game and a movie simultaneously instead of having to watch a movie and then choosing to maybe purchase the video game based off of it later. They are being encouraged and forced to engage in both at the same time. So um, that is one of the new ways that the industry has been finding ways to be able to please this need within the audience is by actually combining two mediums into one medium. So, virtual reality is a great example of that. They've combined video games and movies almost into a weird hybrid between the two. And that's another way of doing it. So one is to just straight up adapt a story from one platform into another platform. The other way is to merge two platforms together, which we see with like virtual reality and that kind of stuff. And the third way, which kind of emerged in 2009, had a big heyday in 2009, in the early 2000s, but has died off recently and has kind of come back all of a sudden and just like the last 2 years. And that is the idea of telling a story that requires audiences to actually go to different mediums to be able to finish the story. So the concept here is to start a story in one platform and then have the audience have to move to another platform to finish it. We've seen this recently with AT&T, where they've partnered with creators on YouTube to be able to build social media stories in which they release these videos on YouTube. But to continue the story, the audience must go to places like Facebook or Twitter and engage in conversations to be able to get the next piece of the story before the next video comes out that will then continue the story from the engagement that they engaged in on like Twitter and whatnot. Um, we've also seen a bunch of experimental kind of ways where people are trying to integrate this into films. We saw this with God's Not Dead, where at the end, the film prompted everyone to text their friends the message "God's not dead." We've seen this in other films that have done the same thing as well. Recently, one of the films that was nominated for an Oscar did the same thing for uh, racial awareness, where you were encouraged to go to a website and leave a comment. We see where uh, like talk show hosts are doing the same thing where they are encouraging the audience to engage with them through other platforms like Twitter and whatnot. And that directly bleeds over into what they do on screen when they do their talk show. So that's kind of the three ways that have emerged over the last 15, 20 years. And now, granted, some of those are much older than that, but those are the ones that have kind of come to the spotlight in the last 15, 20 years to fill this interesting place that we've reached in the entertainment industry. Is one, to adapt a story from one platform into the next, which we've seen become something that the audiences are no longer satisfied with. The other one is to merge two platforms together, which has been kind of the most recent one that has come out. So that one is still very much new as to what the audience is going to think about it, because it hasn't really reached a point to where it's accessible enough for us to be able to get a good read onto what the audience is thinking of this new technology. But that's the first two ways, is adapting and merging. And then the third way is the continuation, where you bridge a story from one platform to the next to force the audience to engage in multiple kinds of entertainment by having to platform jump to finish a story. So, um, those have been kind of the new ways that stories have come to be able to please this new audience that we find ourselves with. And there have been several platforms that have emerged with the specific goal of doing this. YouTube being one of the leaders, and uh, as part of the whole Google verse. Yes, I'm patenting that. I can't really patent that because it's not a process, but I'm copywriting that, the Google verse. But with YouTube being part of the whole Google ecosystem, they're really being able to work with like Google Play and their music services and their app services, and as well as being able to get into live TV and all that stuff with their comment service that they also provide. They're becoming a platform that is trying to future proof itself by being able to reach this sort of platform media jumping way of reaching audiences, where you continue a story from one medium or one platform into the next by being able to offer all those different mediums on a single platform, which is kind of interesting, um, especially since they've gotten 360 support on their videos as well, and they're heavily involved in um, virtual reality. They're actually building a really neat platform to be able to capitalize on this new audience that has emerged. So uh, as we move forward, we're probably going to see adaptations dying off in the traditional way that we're used to, where you would straight up just take the story from one medium and translate it into another medium. And we're going to be seeing more of these meshing of two mediums, or these continual stories that jump from one medium to the next, because the audience is no longer just satisfied with these adaptations. They're demanding that we do more with how we tell them. So, so yeah, there was that real quick. And some of these ways that have emerged and how the industry has fixed that. So, before I move on into some ways that we can all kind of get our foot in the door with this, I want to make sure that no more questions emerged as to what I just. Cool, nothing new. Awesome. I like it that way. Okay. That means people hopefully are understanding. Um so yeah, so the real question is now, as creators, how do we survive this new audience that we found ourselves having to please? What are some different ways that we can try to reach them and satisfy what they're demanding from us? And really, because it's so early in the game, which is good because that means, if we all get going with it, we'll be at the head of the curve. But because this is the tail end, or not the tail end, the front end of where audiences are going now, it's really hard to know what's going to work. What's going to be the best way to engage with them. So, yes, I know it's a lot of info. I'm sorry. Um, but basically, there are a few different ways that have been proven to work so far. So I'm going to run over those. The first one is individual fanism, which is really interesting. Basically, this is where a creator builds a industry around themselves. So we see this a lot with internet stars, where they participate in a particular medium. So, like pop artist or something will be famous for their music, but they build their brand around themselves to where people aren't following their music, but they're following the human being. So now the human being can cross through different forms of entertainment and it's less bumpy for the audience. So, um, we can have a music singer who can entertain audiences through, smart remarks on Twitter or funny post on Facebook or whatever, who is now entertaining and engaging with their audience in a totally different way from music, but it doesn't feel weird for the audience because they've built a persona as to where they're not the music they create, but they're the person who creates the music. So they're able to cross these different platforms and provide this different kind of entertainment for the audience without it being awkward for the audience because because the audience themselves will participate in multiple different platforms and within a single day. So since they're starting to see the creators as people and not as the creations that they create, they see how they can jump from platform to platform. So that's one of the old fashioned, more tested by time and proven ways to be able to kind of interact with this new audience and be able to engage them in multiple mediums and multiple platforms is to have individual fandoms for the creator and not the content they're creating. So, to go back to where I was talking about Logan Paul earlier, he started out as a comedian on Vine back when Vine was still around, and then he moved to YouTube and started making longer videos on YouTube, and then he moved into making music videos. And none of this felt weird for his audience because his audience was wanting to be engaged in multiple kinds of entertainment. But since they were engaged in following him as a creator and not um, the content he was creating, he was able to smoothly move from platform to platform and medium to medium without it being jumpy for the audience. So that's kind of the most tested by time proven way of doing it is to build an audience around a creator so that they have that freedom to move from platform to platform and they're not confined. Because if you have an audience who is a fan of a particular uh, product like Lord of the Rings, so you have a fan base for Lord of the Rings, not for the people who made Lord of the Rings, it's much harder for the entity of Lord of the Rings to move from platform to platform without it being weird for the audience, as it would be for the creators of Lord of the Rings to move from platform to platform. So, one of the big ways people have been getting around this for years is to have people fans of creators instead of fans of the creations that they create. Because a creator can move from platform to platform and engage in multiple ways of entertainment easier than a set sort of product can. So that's the first way of doing it. Um, the the other way gets kind of tricky, and this is to so there's two ways of doing it. There's the product way and the individual way. The individual way is what I've just described. So the way to do it for a product or a particular story becomes very labor intensive and requires a lot of people. You can almost go uh, when it comes to like building a fan base for a particular creator, you can almost still go with the whole independent indie kind of um, creator. Where, as before, I was discussing how that is kind of dying off. This is kind of a particular bubble in which it can still survive, where a creator can can still be able to kind of be a one man band, but be able to please this new audience. But on to products and how products do it. So, the way that products do it is by starting from day one as planning not to exist on one platform. So, in this way, your story has to be living and breathing in a new way than it's ever been before, where you have to sit down and create a story from day one that isn't confined to one medium or has aspects of it that aren't. So, um, examples of this would be to create a movie that particularly dealt with a blogger. That way, you could actually create the blog from the movie to where audiences could interact with this same story on this blog as well as watching the movie, or to create a TV show about a fictitious news source and make a Facebook page for the news source and have the characters that people follow in the TV show who are writing these articles about these fictitious things that are happening, because of course it's fictitious world, it's a TV show, actually writing the and researching the news articles that people then see and can read on the Facebook page. So as if, the people and characters from the TV shows had written it. So those are the two ways that have currently emerged of how to please this audience. To create stories that are designed for multiple mediums, or to create fan bases around creators so that they can easily be moved from platform to platform and aren't confined to a single platform. Um, and I've done a webinar before on building a fan base, although I definitely think it needs to be revisited because I didn't even get part of the way through with everything I wanted to cover when I did it the first time. So I will hopefully be revisiting that at some point in the future. I don't know when, but I guess I should probably put that webinar link somewhere too before someone asks for it. Um, but yeah, so those are kind of the two ways I've emerged to do it, to build a story that crosses from platform to platform, or to um, have an audience built around a creator so that they can move freely and easily. So, um, kind of the big question that leaves us with now here in the last couple of minutes that we have is what what do we do? Like as creators, what do we need to do moving forward? And especially for you out there who are Christian creators, how do we tackle this moving forward? And I really think that the the most obvious way of tackling this moving forward is to now view being the creator as a team sport. I think we've passed the days of the individual indie creators. I think we've now entered a new time in which creators must work as a team to be able to make it. So, um, and I think that actually functions the way that the world was designed, especially if you come from a biblical standpoint. We have the body of Christ that is described in the Bible, and we know that humanity has been designed from a standpoint to be able to work together and to bear each other's burdens. So I definitely think that moving forward, the the way to be able, which actually creates a really interesting opportunity for us. But the way to be able to captivate the audience is to work together. Because as I kind of talked about, it's not possible for one creator to be to be creating high quality content that the audience is demanding in multiple platforms, because you can't focus on creating high quality content when you can't spend the time to figure out how a particular platform works, because you're trying to learn a million platforms at the same time and you can't focus on learning that one way of telling a story. So the audience is kind of forcing us to work together to be able to accomplish these new things. So I think um, it actually creates a really interesting opportunity for the indie um, artists to kind of take over the industry if we get on board together. If indie artists and creators would all work together on creating things and being able to please this new audience who wants these multimedia kind of stories and could work together on being able to tell them, I think that's the way to captivate the audience. And I think the independent creators, since we're coming out of this sort of era of people preferring the independent creators over the industry creators, they preferred those little nobodies who felt more like them. Since we're coming out of that era, I think if they could all band together to start creating this kind of content that the audience wants, it wouldn't be hard at all to overthrow the industry. So, in that way, I think it very much reflects the body of Christ and how that's supposed to function, where um, there's supposed to be many members of the body all headed towards one goal. So, in that same sense, I think that that's the way to be able to captivate this audience, and that's the way to be able to even, take over the entire industry, is to work as a unit and work as a team for a particular story, not for separate stories, but to work in multiple mediums and multiple platforms and multiple forms of engagement as a team on a single story. So, um, as for anybody out there who are Christian storytellers, I think that the Christian industry actually has the upper hand in all this, because the audience has actually come to a point not only where they're wanting more wholesome entertainment and more family friendly entertainment and all that, but also to the point where they're demanding the industry to work together in such a way that the church is designed to work together. So in that sense, Christian storytellers actually have the upper hand currently with this new audience if they can move fast enough to capitalize on it. If not, they'll just fall into the dust like they did with the film industry. For anybody who knows the history of the film industry, most of the major inventions and major leaps forward in the very early years of motion pictures were made by Christians for the sense of evangelism, but they ended up trampling themselves over because they weren't able to move fast enough, and other people, secular platforms, were able to move faster than them, and they had to withdraw from the race. And it's only been recently that they've gone back in it. So I think we've reached an interesting point where Christian storytellers have that power once again because of the way the audience is forcing the industry to go and what they're demanding from them. Christian storytellers have the unique ability to be able to work together because they already have this common unified goal and what they're trying to do. So all they need to do is actually start working together in that common goal, where the rest of the industry has to first find a common goal and then work together. The Christian industry is a step ahead, where they already have this common goal and what they're trying to do with the stories that they tell and where these stories are supposed to be going. The only step now is to just actually work together in that. So, um, so moving forward, I I really think that this leaves an opportunity for the indie industry to be able to kind of take over from the current big corporations that exist. But more than anything, I see as an opportunity for the Christian indie industry to be able to really take over. Because right now they actually hold all the cards and they have the upper hand. They literally have every piece of the puzzle that this audience is demanding. If they can just work together and capitalize on it, um, they have the ability to do it. So now, granted, that's my personal opinions from the data that I read. The next person might give you something totally different, but that is where several people have seen the industry going for years, is in this multi-platformed way that kind of forces creators to work as teams instead of individuals. And I see it as if the church practices what they preach and they actually work as a body like they should, then they're a step ahead because they've already been talking about and working this way for years. So um, I'm going to check in real quick, make sure there weren't any questions during that time that I went off on that little spill. Okay. Yeah. So this is something that I've picked up recently. In case no one has figured this out, I am not a creative person, and I am a self-proclaimed uncreative person, actually. Um, but I've discovered that creative people tend to not understand the business analytical side of the creating process, and those who try to understand it become worse at being creative. So this is another way that the audiences are forcing us to have to work together, because they're now demanding the entertainment to be more business driven, and how and like what we choose to create, but they're also demanding that it be more creative. And business people can't be creative because they have too many set in stone facts that they're dealing with, that it's hard for them to think abstract. And creators can't think about these set in stone facts because they, unless they stop thinking abstractly, because that's how they function. So I think that really the best way to deal with this data, and for it to be less scary and less doomsday ish, is to find somebody and work with somebody in whatever you're creating who isn't creative but who is factually minded to handle all that for you, because you guys are the creative people. You're not the factual people. So this would be like I was talking about earlier, where um, it's not possible for you to create really great music and write really great books. It's just not possible, because you have, the audience is demanding you to be laser focused in one or the other, but they're demanding that you do both. And that's kind of what it is with these facts as well. The audience is demanding that you be super creative, but also that you be ahead of the curve and you be able to see where things are going and be able to analyze all this kind of stuff. But because of the way that the human psychology works, we literally can't do both. We can't be super analytical and see where things are going and all that while we're trying to be creative. We can't do both. So I think the best way is to realize that you, as a creator, this kind of changes in the industry, changes in the audience and what they want, isn't your problem. That's actually somebody else's problem. Your problem is now to be creative and how you try to tell stories in these new mediums that have been emerging. How to use these mediums and how to have your story told in them is somebody else's problem. That's distributors' problems. That's their niche. Yours is to come up with creative stories that can be told in these new mediums. So don't think of it as, oh, I need to understand, which platforms are going to be the ones that are around in 10 or 15 years, or, where the industry is going next. Don't think of it that way. Think of it as your job is, oh, well, what I need to understand is how to be creative in this new platform or creative in where the industry is going. Your job isn't to see where the industry is going or to see what's going to be the next platform. Your job is to be creative in the ones that are pointed out to you. Does that make sense? I hope that helped. Maybe it made it a little less scary or more stressful. I don't know. And was that the only question that I needed to tackle? Oh, wow. That's a whole conversation in and of itself. And I only have 4 minutes, but I will try to quickly do it. So, basically, the less story that a um, the less story that a story has, the more creator centered it has to be. The more story it has, the more it needs to stand on its own. So, Lord of the Rings, very story driven. There's a lot of world building, a lot of character development, and all that. Basically, the audience can't be overwhelmed with too much. So if there's so much going on in the story, that's what it needs to be. It needs to be the story that you market, because the audience doesn't need to be concerned with anything else. The story is already engaging enough. It requires so much from them already that they don't need to be concerned about another facet. Where if the story is simple with things like YouTube or music, where you don't have very story intensive, not that music or YouTube doesn't have stories, but they don't have these intensive like world building, character building stories of like a movie or a book. That's when they need to be more creator focused, because they're less story focused. So the audience now needs something else to engage in, because the story itself isn't fulfilling the amount of engagement that they want. So more story driven products need to be marketed as a product. Um, Less story driven products need to be marketed as a creator, because then people are following the story of the creator to fulfill that multimedia platform sort of need that they have as a creator, where more story driven stories, they start using their imagination to be able to fill that multimedia need. I really hope that that was a quick, easy to understand explanation to that question. Okay, making sure that there's no more questions now that we have 2 minutes left. We're cool. All right, neat. Okay, so real quick before we go, if anybody is interested in checking out creators, the link is there. If anybody's got any kind of cool short films or novels or music videos or music or anything that you like to share, totally jump over there and share it. Um, I would love to see any of it, and I'm sure that other people over there would love to see all the stuff you guys are creating. See if y'all guys can't meet some other people who know how to create things in multiple platforms, start working together and that kind of stuff. We will be back doing another one of these webinars um, very soon. I'm actually pulling up the calendar to see when it will be. Um, we will actually be doing another one of these um, in another 3 weeks. So the 13th of May will be the next time that we have one of these. Um, and that one will actually be, we'll be going back over the creators platform and how it functions. And hopefully we'll be able to have some time to touch back on building fan bases and that kind of stuff. So um, look forward to seeing you all on May the 13th after you've spent the day with your mom. So, since that is Mother's Day, spend the day with your mom first. And then that evening, you can come chill out with us. Unless, of course, you plan on chilling out with your mom that evening, then chill out with your mom instead. Because these are recorded, they can be watched later. Mother's Day only happens one day. So, anyway, that's what we'll be doing next is now 10 o'clock. So thank you guys for chilling out with us and for not freaking out over all this information. And I hope I've been able to present it in a way that you kind of understood. Let's all give Heidi a really big round of applause, even though she can't hear it. But everybody give her a big round of applause for keeping up with the comments and making sure that your questions did indeed get answered. Okay. Well, everyone, I will see you guys hopefully soon. And I really look forward to seeing anything that y'all have created over there on the creators platform. I'm really excited about that. So, catch you guys soon.